Alright, here's a brief intro to constructivism. We're looking at that root word, construct, because that's what it's all about. A learner constructing their knowledge through their own experience. Here are three constructivist theorists. The first is Jerome Bruner. He is an American psychologist who did a lot of work in the 60s, and he believes that learning is best when it is inquiry-based and discovery-based. Then he kind of coined this theory into the term discovery learning. This is directly related to constructivism because of its emphasis on self-assured learning and self-motivated learning. Vygotsky is the second theorist listed. If you ever had any kind of child development psychology class, you've probably heard about Vygotsky, but he is a Soviet psychologist who did a lot of his important work in the late 70s, early 80s, and he emphasizes social learning and socialization. He says that these are the keys to furthering cognitive development in the more traditional style like you would see in a learning environment in a school. He also coined the term scaffolding, which involves an expert working and helping alongside of a novice in the process to which a novice can eventually perform skills and tasks without the help and aid of an expert. This is a great method and activity that is related to constructivism because it is getting a student to construct their own learning eventually through the help of an expert. The last theorist listed is Jean Lave. She's actually an anthropologist who did a lot of important work in the 90s. She's still alive today, in her 80s, I believe. And she emphasizes the importance of context and culture in learning. And her theory is called situated learning theory. It involves a lot of interaction, collaboration, and community because she believes that all learning is embedded within context and culture and that those are attached directly to the content that is learned. Flipped classrooms are a recently new approach to classroom learning where the information getting in the form of lectures is the student's responsibility on their own time, and class time is used for activities, discussion, sharing based on that information learned. This quote is from Aaron Sams, who is one of the big minds behind the flipped classroom. He says flipping the classroom is more about a mindset, redirecting attention away from the teacher and putting attention on the learner and the learning, which is directly related to the importance of constructivism. You're putting the learner at the center of their own learning. The lecture topic for the lesson today is fittingly about constructivism, the theories, and their implications. Here's the video that I would choose as the lecture that the students would watch on their own time. It is an introduction to constructivism, a TEDx video by Michelle Thompson. It talks about what constructivism is, how it's used in the classroom, and why it's used in the classroom.
Is what mattered. For long before that, I had thought that the who in education was the educator. Wasn't this about me, the Michelle Thompson show, how great I could be? But when I really stepped back, I realized that the learner, and even using that word, because before that it was always the student, realizing that the learner is at the center of constructivism. Understanding an individual child and what they need matters. And that's what I had experienced there in that music session that was based on constructivism. Now, constructivism isn't a new theory, and it's been around a very long time. So what actually is it, and who are its pioneers? Based on the work of four theorists who were Kant, Piaget, Vygotsky, and Bruner, these three pioneers developed just hinge pins of what constructivism can look like. So most commonly known is Frederick Froebel. If you went to kindergarten, you experienced his work. That's why kindergarten feels so amazing. I decided if I started a school, I would want it to feel like kindergarten every day because kindergarten is that unbelievable. It's based on constructivist principles. Another is Rudolf Steiner. He developed the Waldorf method. that believes that learning through outside environment and the environment and natural products is the best way for learners. So that was his approach to constructivism. But probably most commonly known in the world's largest pedagogy, which some people don't know, is the work of Dr. Maria Montessori, who actually took constructivist principles and put them into practice and developed an entire method around it. So what is constructivism? If you Google search that word or look it up, it actually means that the learner is observing, and through scientific method, so those two words, observation and scientific method, is what constructivism is based on. And it believes that the learner is constructing for him or herself her own set or his own set of questions and answers. But it's only through experience, hands-on experience, that the learner actually learns something. Now, sure, you can pass a test, you can learn information and knowledge and regurgitate it and say it back the way, but did you really learn something? A month from now or a year from now, were you transformed at all? You see, constructivism is based on experience. And so it says that when there's an emotional connection and when you actually are interested in it, then true learning happens. So how is another question in constructivism. How do you make that work? I didn't understand that until I actually was in a master's program. I had never even seen this word before. And I was in a cohort of many, many from around the country. We were talking about the ideal ways to bring education to life. And it was a consensus among all of them that this word constructivism was the ideal. But yet so few in the cohort knew how to get there. So in that regard, the environment really matters in constructivism, and there's very few models that actually take it to that degree. So here's an example of the environment. The child or the learner themselves is actually working inside hands-on. Now, why does the hand matter? The hand is the chief teacher. The hand is the intellect of the mind. Dr. Montessori said that. And Dr. Stephen Hughes, right here he's a neuroscience at the University of Minnesota, also said the same thing, that the hand shows the interest of the mind. When the hand is extended, the frontal lobes light up. There's interest. Choice also plays a part of this. You know what that's like, to be disinterested, to just sit and have information go in one ear and out the other. There's no igniting of the neural spark in the brain. But when you're interested in the topic, then your frontal lobes ignite. And often the hand is involved in this process for children. Constructivism also answers this question, why? And I think this is the most important. If you study meta-learning, which is the highest forms of learning, they say that you have to have meaning and purpose to be interested, to remember what's happening. And two big reasons constructivism shows meaning and purpose. The first is in self-awareness. We become more aware of our own self and how we're reacting in the environment. Our own multiple intelligences can be engaged. And you see this boy, order and beauty. These are things that in human tendency and experience we desire every day. The second is community awareness. Constructivism lends itself to children working and interacting together. The competition is removed, you see, because testing and scores and all of these things aren't the primary goal anymore. It's actually true learning and engagement. But this isn't just limited to children. Do you know that constructivism actually works itself out in lots of areas? This college, Bethany Global University, is a work-study college. It actually is built on this premise that meaning and purpose matters, and that what you're learning and how you're doing it, and that your day-by-day experience is more than sitting in a classroom and taking a test, that meaning and purpose matters. Also, I found in some recent work that I've done in an intergenerational setting that elders also need this, especially elders who are suffering from mild and moderate dementia. They have lost a lot of meaning and purpose. We focused on what they can't do instead of what they can do. And this work from Jennifer Brush, the Brush Development Company, has showed and proven that Montessori for Aging and Dementia is working. And I'm excited to be a part of that as well. So constructivism doesn't have to just be limited to children. It can be to every sector. There are researchers here. This Ertman and Newby studied the 3 different models, which are behaviorism, that's more the traditional model, cognitism, that's focusing on kind of a model or some concept that we're going to rally around, or constructivism. And comparing them, you can see constructivism is on the top in terms of the retention, the information, and the experience.
Here are the 5 stations I would use for the in-classroom activity that goes with the video. As you can see, I have a review station over here on the corner. That would be a summary of the information learned from the video, and then the other 4 stations are about different theories and theorists related to constructivism. Here is a roadmap that outlines the different stations. On the left column, I just have the title and category of each station. Then in that next column, I kind of have a big question related to the station. What is the goal of this station? What are we looking to gain from this station? What question are we trying to answer? Then in that third column, I have the activity that would be completed at this station. I tried to match them up and align them really well with the implications of the theory. So for Vygotsky's theory, social development, I have a compare-contrast sheet where students would be able to compare their own learning experiences with the implications of Vygotsky's theory and think about how their learning experiences have either related nicely to this theory or differed from this theory. In the discovery learning section on Bruner, I would make a pro and con sheet where students would be listing the pros of a discovery learning approach and the cons of those, and they could kind of weigh those so that they could determine whether discovery learning is more beneficial to their learning personally, they think, than a more traditional learning setting. Then the connectivism station, since it's all about networks that students and learners are engaged in, I thought it would be nice to create kind of a physical discussion board on maybe the whiteboard in the classroom where students could post a contribution and then create a conversation within this discussion board, kind of like one that would be on Canvas, about the connectivist theory. In the situated learning theory station, I thought it would be nice to have a creative component where students could create a definition or representation of what they believe situated learning theory should look like. They could draw a picture, they could craft a poem, write a narrative story about the perspective of the student in a classroom where situated learning is important. And then lastly, in the constructivist definition station, I just thought that the students could use this time to create a representation of what they believe constructivism to be based off of what the video that they watched said. They could write a summary, they could draw a picture, any way that they feel that they can represent the definition of constructivism and show what they gained from that video. And then this last column, I just left a space for the students to kind of check off as they complete each station.